Tonight, we're exploring one of the most mind-bending scenarios in planetary physics. What would happen if Earth suddenly stopped its ancient spin? That's because everything around you moves together in perfect cosmic synchronization. But what if this 4.6 billion-year dance suddenly ended? We'll discover how our planet's hidden velocity would instantly become visible in the most catastrophic way imaginable. You'll see how the laws of physics would transform every solid object on Earth into an unstoppable projectile racing eastward. A world where day and night each last 6 months. And we'll trace how this cosmic transformation would force humanity to completely reimagine survival itself. So settle in. Before we begin, leave a quick note in the comments, where you're listening from, or one thought you're carrying tonight. I read them, and they genuinely help shape future journeys. If you'd like more nights like this, subscribe, only if you enjoy these late-night journeys. Now let's begin. You're currently traveling faster than any highway speed limit. At the equator, Earth's spin carries everything eastward at 1,040 miles per hour. That's faster than the top speed of most commercial jets. You can't feel this cosmic velocity because absolutely everything shares the same motion. Your coffee mug sits calmly on the table. Your house rests peacefully on its foundation. Even the air molecules around you drift along at an identical speed. This creates a perfect illusion of stillness. We actually race through space together like passengers on the world's most massive carnival ride. We've been riding this planetary carousel our entire lives without realizing it. Physics has a simple but ruthless rule about motion. When any moving object suddenly stops, everything riding along keeps traveling at its original speed. Picture what happens when a speeding car hits a wall. The vehicle stops instantly. The passengers keep moving forward until something else stops them. Now imagine that same principle applied to an entire planet. Every person standing at the equator would instantly become a human cannonball. We'd launch eastward at nearly 1,500 feet per second, while the ground stops spinning beneath us. Buildings wouldn't just topple gracefully. They'd rip away from their foundations and rocket across the landscape like enormous concrete missiles. The skylines of equatorial cities would become horizontal projectiles, all of them streaking toward the eastern horizon. This eastward exodus wouldn't affect everyone equally. Earth's rotation speed changes dramatically based on your distance from the equator. People at the North Pole would barely budge. They experience almost zero rotational speed, but residents of New York would suddenly find themselves hurtling eastward at 780 miles per hour. In Miami, that speed jumps to 918 miles per hour. By the time you reach Ecuador or Singapore, everything launches at maximum velocity. Even more remarkably, Earth's interior would join this chaotic migration. The molten rock circulating deep within our planet has been rotating steadily for billions of years. When the surface stops, this superheated material continues flowing eastward through underground layers. The resulting stress would trigger the most violent geological activity in planetary history. Earthquakes would crack every continent. Different layers of Earth would struggle to synchronize. Volcanoes would explode from the internal chaos. Materials would slide past each other at different speeds. What if you woke up tomorrow and discovered the sun had stopped moving across the sky? It just hangs there, forever. While the immediate destruction would grab headlines, something even more fundamental would break. Our assumption that tomorrow will bring another sunrise. For over 4 billion years, Earth's steady 24-hour spin has regulated every aspect of life on our planet. Plants photosynthesize during the day and rest at night. Animals wake with sunrise and sleep after sunset. Ocean tides rise and fall twice daily. Our entire biological heritage assumes that roughly every 24 hours, light and darkness will alternate in predictable cycles. Remove that rotation, and this fundamental rhythm completely shatters. Half the planet would experience eternal noon. The other half would sink into permanent midnight. The sun would appear frozen at high noon for one hemisphere. The opposite side would face an endless night sky. This isn't temporary. It's the new permanent reality. The only change would come from Earth's continued yearly orbit around the sun. This gradually shifts which regions face toward our star across the months. This creates a terrifying new version of seasons. Instead of 4 gentle transitions throughout the year, Earth would alternate between 2 extreme phases. 6 months of continuous daylight followed by 6 months of absolute darkness. The sunny side would endure half a year of relentless solar bombardment. Surface temperatures would climb past 170 degrees Fahrenheit. The atmosphere would become a planetary oven with no nighttime cooling breaks. Meanwhile, the dark hemisphere would plunge into 6 months of cosmic winter. Temperatures would drop below minus 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Heat would radiate away into space with zero solar energy for replacement. These aren't just uncomfortable temperature swings. They represent conditions that would make complex life completely impossible across most of the planet. Only one narrow zone would offer any hope for survival: the twilight boundary where day meets night. This 300-mile wide band would circle the globe like a permanent sunset strip. Here, the sun would hang forever at the horizon, creating eternal dusk conditions. This thin refuge would become Earth's only habitable real estate. The few surviving organisms would witness a sun that never moves, suspended at the edge of their world like a cosmic lighthouse, marking the boundary between Earth's furnace and its deep freezer. Close your eyes and imagine 44 trillion watts of power churning beneath your feet right now. That's roughly 40,000 nuclear power plants running simultaneously deep inside Earth. You can't feel this enormous energy because it's been operating smoothly for 4.6 billion years. Earth's rotation helps organize this internal powerhouse. Like a cosmic mixing bowl, stop the spinning, and this underground nuclear furnace completely loses its mind. Our planet's core operates like the universe's most sophisticated power plant. Radioactive elements deep underground constantly split apart and release tremendous heat. This energy drives massive circulation currents in Earth's molten iron center. The spinning motion of liquid metal generates our protective magnetic field. Scientists call this the Geronimo effect. It's basically a planetary-sized electrical generator powered by atomic decay. Here's where stopping Earth's rotation triggers a geological nightmare. The molten iron in our outer core has been flowing in organized patterns for billions of years. These circulation currents depend entirely on Earth's steady spin to maintain their structure. Remove the rotation, and these currents collapse into chaos. Imagine a perfectly choreographed dance suddenly losing its music. Every dancer crashes into one another. The magnetic field protecting Earth from deadly solar radiation would fluctuate wildly before eventually dying completely. Without this invisible shield, high-energy particles from space would strip away our atmosphere within a few million years. But long before that happens, the magnetic chaos would create havoc with every electronic system on the planet. GPS satellites would fail. Power grids would overload from induced electrical currents. Communication networks would go dark. Even worse, the disrupted core circulation would trigger massive changes in Earth's internal heat distribution. Regions that normally receive steady geothermal energy would suddenly cool. Areas that typically stay stable would experience violent heating. The result would be the most intense period of volcanic activity in planetary history. Earthquakes would rock every continent. The planet's interior would try to establish new circulation patterns. What makes this scenario truly mind-bending is the timescale involved. While the surface destruction would happen in minutes, the core reorganization would continue for thousands of years. Earth would essentially be rebuilding its internal power plant from scratch. Right now, 20,000 artificial objects zip through space above your head. They move at 17,500 miles per hour. They're following invisible highways called orbital paths. Some of these paths, especially geosynchronous ones, are defined relative to Earth's rotation. These satellites provide GPS directions to your phone. They beam internet signals to remote locations. They relay television broadcasts across continents. Most people never think about this orbital infrastructure until it all comes crashing down at once. Satellite orbits represent one of humanity's most elegant engineering achievements. Each spacecraft follows a precisely calculated path. It balances Earth's gravitational pull against its forward momentum. Many satellites use what engineers call geosynchronous orbits. They circle Earth exactly once every 24 hours. This lets them hover above the same spot on the surface, creating the illusion that they're standing still in space. But here's the problem. Geosynchronous orbital calculations assume Earth continues rotating every 24 hours. When our planet suddenly stops spinning, geosynchronous satellites would instantly find themselves in the wrong place. They would no longer stay positioned above their assigned locations. They'd drift relative to the motionless surface below. Within hours, the entire geosynchronous constellation would start to scatter like leaves in a hurricane. The immediate result could be a massive digital blackout affecting billions of people. GPS navigation could quickly become unreliable. Drivers could become stranded and pilots could fly blind. Internet connections relying on satellite links could vanish. Weather forecasting systems could lose critical data sources. Military communication networks could go silent. The International Space Station might lose reliable contact with ground control as communication satellites drift out of position. Even satellites in different types of orbits could face serious problems. Over time, the loss of rotation would alter Earth's shape and gravitational field. This might sound minor, but spacecraft navigation requires incredible precision. Even tiny gravitational changes could slowly push some satellites into less stable orbits. Some might eventually spiral inward toward Earth's atmosphere and burn up. Others might drift into less useful paths and become harder to track. Perhaps most remarkably, this orbital catastrophe would strand humanity's most advanced technology at the exact moment we'd need it most. The satellites that normally coordinate emergency response systems could be useless. The weather monitoring systems that could track the atmospheric chaos could go dark. The communication networks that might help survivors organize could fail completely. Our most sophisticated tools for understanding and responding to this planetary crisis would become expensive space junk. Before you lose sleep worrying about Earth suddenly stopping, here's some cosmic perspective. This scenario violates fundamental laws of physics so dramatically that it's essentially impossible. Earth's rotation contains so much energy that stopping it instantly would require forces beyond anything the universe can reasonably produce. Let's put some numbers on this reassuring impossibility. Earth's rotational energy equals roughly 2.6 times 10 to the 29 joules. That's more energy than humanity has used throughout our entire recorded history. It's equivalent to detonating 100 billion nuclear weapons simultaneously. Even the most powerful cosmic events can't deliver enough force to halt Earth's spin instantaneously. Asteroid impacts, volcanic superexplosions, nearby supernova, none could stop Earth's rotation. But here's what makes this thought experiment scientifically valuable. Even though sudden stopping is impossible, Earth's rotation actually is slowing down gradually. The gravitational pull of our moon creates tidal friction that removes rotational energy bit by bit. Earth's days are getting longer by about 1.7 milliseconds per century. Over millions of years, this adds up to noticeable changes. Ancient coral fossils reveal that 400 million years ago, Earth spun faster. Days lasted only 22 hours instead of our current 24. This gradual slowing has been ongoing since the Moon formed 4.5 billion years ago. Eventually, in billions of years, Earth will become tidally locked to the Moon. One hemisphere will face the Moon permanently, just like one side of the Moon always faces Earth. This distant future provides a gentler version of our thought experiment. Instead of catastrophic instant stopping, Earth would gradually transition to extremely long days lasting several weeks each. Life would have millions of generations to adapt to the changing conditions. Ocean currents would reorganize slowly. Weather patterns would shift gradually. Biological systems would evolve new strategies for surviving extended periods of light and darkness. The real lesson from this impossible scenario isn't about planetary catastrophes. It's about appreciating the incredible stability of Earth's rotation. For 4.6 billion years, our planet has maintained this steady 24-hour rhythm, despite countless asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, and ice ages. This rotational consistency provided the stable foundation that allowed complex life to evolve and flourish. Sometimes the most remarkable thing about our planet isn't what could change. It's what has remained beautifully, reassuringly constant throughout cosmic time. Imagine stepping onto the world's most violent theme park ride without realizing it. That's essentially what every person experiences the moment Earth stops spinning. Your body has been traveling eastward at incredible speeds your entire life, blissfully unaware of this hidden velocity. At the equator, you're currently cruising at 1,040 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound. Your morning coffee, your breakfast table, even the air in your lungs all share this same breakneck pace. The human body wasn't designed to suddenly become a supersonic missile. When Earth's surface stops but your body continues eastward at highway speeds, physics treats you like any other projectile. Your feet lose contact with the ground first. Your torso follows half a second later. Within moments, you're flying horizontally through the air at velocities that would make Formula One drivers weep with envy. But here's where the human cannonball experience gets truly terrifying. You won't just sail gracefully through the air like a movie stunt. Air resistance at these speeds creates forces that human bodies simply cannot survive. The drag force equals roughly 50 times your body weight. That's like having 50 copies of yourself suddenly pile on top of you, all while you're already flying through the air. Your clothing would be stripped away instantly. Exposed skin would experience temperatures hot enough to cause severe burns from air friction alone. Landing becomes an entirely different nightmare. You'd impact whatever lies to the east at speeds comparable to a major car crash. Trees, buildings, hills, anything in your eastward flight path becomes a potential landing zone. There's no gentle touchdown from this cosmic ride. The physics are unforgiving and absolute. What makes this scenario even more disturbing is how it varies by location. Someone standing at the North Pole would barely stumble. A person in New York would become a 780 miles per hour projectile. Residents of Ecuador or Singapore would achieve full supersonic speeds. The closer you live to the equator, the more spectacular and deadly your unexpected flight becomes. Geography literally determines your survival chances in this impossible scenario. Even more remarkably, this human projectile experience would be completely silent for the first few seconds. Sound travels at only 767 miles per hour in normal air. At equatorial speeds, you'd be flying faster than the sound of your own screaming could keep up. You'd experience a brief moment of eerie silence before the sonic boom of your own body catches up and deafens anyone unfortunate enough to be nearby. Mountains don't typically go anywhere. They sit patiently for millions of years while wind and rain slowly chip away at their peaks. The Himalayas have occupied the same general neighborhood for 50 million years, growing taller at the leisurely pace of fingernail growth. But when Earth stops spinning, even these geological giants discover they've been secretly traveling at jet aircraft speeds this whole time. The Himalayan mountain range currently races eastward at roughly 80-70 miles per hour due to Earth's rotation. That's the combined momentum of trillions of tons of rock, all moving together in perfect synchronization. These peaks contain more mass than all the water in the Mediterranean Sea. This incomprehensible mass of rock would keep moving. Relative to a stationary planet, the results would redefine our understanding of geological catastrophe. Rock behaves very differently than most people imagine when subjected to extreme forces. Solid granite and limestone don't simply slide across the surface like pieces on a game board. Instead, the incredible stresses would cause massive chunks of mountainsides to break apart and tumble eastward in apocalyptic rock slides. Picture every major mountain range on Earth simultaneously experiencing the largest landslides in geological history. But here's where this geological nightmare gets even more mind-bending. Different parts of the same mountain would move at slightly different speeds, depending on their elevation above Earth's surface. Mountain peaks sit farther from Earth's rotational axis than their bases. This means the top of Mount Everest travels eastward about 6 miles per hour faster than its foundation. When the planet stops, this speed difference would literally tear mountains apart from top to bottom. The Appalachian Mountains would slide eastward into the Atlantic Ocean like a slow-motion geological avalanche. The Rocky Mountains would lumber toward the Great Plains, burying entire states under billions of tons of displaced rock. The Alps would migrate toward Eastern Europe at speeds that would make continental drift look like a coffee break. Every major mountain range would abandon its ancient postal address and go house hunting in the eastern suburbs. Perhaps most remarkably, this geological relocation project would continue for hours after the initial momentum transfer. Rock slides and landslides would cascade down newly formed slopes, creating secondary and tertiary geological disasters. The landscape would literally be rebuilding itself from scratch as gravity and momentum work together to find new equilibrium positions. Earth's entire topographical map would need to be completely redrawn by any survivors of this impossible scenario. Here's something that would make this global catastrophe even more surreal. Not everyone gets the same terrifying experience. Earth's rotation creates what physicists call a velocity gradient. Your distance from the equator directly determines your speed of destruction. This cosmic lottery system means your home address literally decides whether you barely notice Earth stopping or become a supersonic human missile. Stand at the North Pole and you'd experience almost no rotational speed. Earth's axis of rotation passes directly through both poles. These locations barely move as the planet spins. Someone at the exact North Pole would feel like they're standing at the center of a cosmic merry-go-round, watching the rest of the world spin around them. When Earth stops, polar residents would simply lose their footing slightly and stumble a bit. But as you travel south from the North Pole, your hidden velocity steadily increases with every mile. By the time you reach northern Canada, you're already moving eastward at 200 miles per hour without knowing it. In Minneapolis, that speed doubles to 400 miles per hour. Chicago residents unknowingly cruise at 500 miles per hour. New York City inhabitants rocket eastward at 70 to 80 miles per hour while sipping their morning coffee. This velocity gradient would create the strangest disaster movie ever filmed. Imagine news reports showing polar regions where people calmly continue their daily routines. Meanwhile, equatorial cities experience total annihilation. Scandinavian countries would suffer minor disruptions while tropical nations face complete destruction. The further south you travel from the North Pole, the more dramatically your life changes when Earth's rotation stops. The southern hemisphere mirrors this same deadly pattern in reverse. Antarctic research stations would remain relatively peaceful, but cities like Sao Paulo, Jakarta, and Nairobi would face the full fury of equatorial rotational speeds. These locations experience maximum velocity because they sit at Earth's widest point, where rotational circumference reaches its peak. What makes this geographic lottery even more bizarre is how it would affect international communication during the crisis. Countries near the poles would still have functioning infrastructure and communication systems. They could watch the disaster unfold via satellite feeds from equatorial regions. Meanwhile, tropical nations would be completely cut off from the outside world. Their entire technological infrastructure launches eastward at supersonic speeds. The global south would go dark while northern countries maintain their ability to document the catastrophe in real time. Every building on Earth currently leans slightly eastward without anyone noticing. This isn't poor construction, it's physics. Earth's rotation creates a subtle but constant eastward force that architects and engineers have been unconsciously designing around for centuries. When the planet stops spinning, this hidden architectural bias turns every skyscraper, house, and monument into a massive wrecking ball. It is aimed at whatever lies to its east. Skyscrapers represent the most spectacular participants in this urban demolition derby. The Empire State Building, for example, has been racing eastward at 70 to 80 miles per hour its entire existence. When Earth stops, this about 360,000 tons architectural monument becomes a horizontal missile targeting Midtown Manhattan. Its Art Deco spire would lead the charge. The entire structure pivots eastward and crashes through neighboring buildings like a 1,250-foot tall domino. But individual building collapses are just the opening act. The real spectacle begins when fallen structures create chain reactions throughout entire cities. Picture downtown Manhattan as an enormous set of dominoes arranged in a grid pattern. The first skyscraper tips eastward and slams into the building next to it. That structure then topples into its eastern neighbor. Within minutes, a wave of collapsing architecture would sweep across the city from west to east, like a slow-motion tsunami made of concrete and steel. Every major city would experience its own unique version of this architectural apocalypse. Los Angeles would see the Hollywood sign slide off Mount Lee and go surfing across the city streets. The Seattle Space Needle would tip eastward like a giant golf tee and take out several city blocks. Chicago's Willis Tower would become a horizontal battering ram aimed at Lake Michigan. Paris would watch the Eiffel Tower perform its final bow toward the eastern suburbs. Even small towns wouldn't escape this gravitational theater. Water towers would topple eastward and flood their neighborhoods. Church steeples would point horizontally toward the sunrise. Suburban houses would slide off their foundations and pile up against their eastern neighbors, like architectural refugees seeking shelter. Every barn, shed, and garage would abandon its original location and relocate itself several hundred feet to the east. The cleanup from this global construction project would take decades, even if anyone survived to attempt it. Roads would be buried under collapsed overpasses. Bridges would lie sideways across highways they once spanned. Airport runways would disappear beneath mountains of displaced hangars and terminal buildings. Humanity would essentially inherit a planet where every piece of infrastructure has been randomly relocated by the universe's most aggressive moving company. Deep beneath your feet, roughly 1,800 miles down, lies an ocean of molten iron. It's been quietly circulating for 4.6 billion years. This liquid metal core operates like Earth's internal bloodstream, flowing in massive currents that generate our protective magnetic field. But here's something that would make geologists lose sleep. This underground ocean has also been rotating at the same speed as the surface all this time. When Earth stops spinning, even the molten interior decides to continue its eastward journey. The outer core contains more liquid iron than all the water in Earth's oceans combined. This superheated metal flows at temperatures around 4,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to vaporize any known material instantly. Under normal conditions, these circulation patterns remain stable and predictable. The liquid iron follows organized convection currents that maintain steady flow patterns. But remove Earth's rotation, and this underground ocean suddenly finds itself sloshing eastward at supersonic speeds relative to the stationary planet above. What happens when molten iron moving faster than the speed of sound encounters solid rock? The result would be something geologists don't have adequate terminology to describe. The friction between moving liquid metal and stationary solid rock would generate heat that makes volcanic eruptions look like birthday candles. The eastern sides of continents would experience unprecedented thermal activity. This internal momentum transfers its energy to the surrounding rock layers. But the chaos doesn't stop at the core mantle boundary. Above the liquid iron core lies 1,800 miles of partially molten rock called the mantle. This material has the consistency of thick honey and normally circulates in slow, steady currents over millions of years. When Earth stops spinning, these massive circulation patterns would also continue flowing eastward at their original rotational speeds. Imagine 1,800 miles of superheated honey suddenly flowing in the same direction at highway speeds. This mantle disruption would trigger volcanic activity on scales never witnessed in Earth's history. Every tectonic plate boundary would experience simultaneous eruptions as disrupted magma finds new pathways to the surface. The ring of fire around the Pacific Ocean would live up to its name. Hundreds of volcanoes would activate simultaneously. Even regions with no volcanic activity in recorded history would suddenly sprout new volcanic mountains. Underground pressure would seek relief. Perhaps most remarkably, this internal chaos would continue for thousands of years after the surface destruction ends. While human civilization deals with the immediate catastrophe of buildings and mountains relocating, Earth's interior would be slowly reorganizing its circulation patterns. The planet would essentially be rebuilding its internal engine from scratch. During this geological reconstruction project, earthquakes would shake the surface regularly. Underground forces would seek new equilibrium positions. Earth would remain volcanically hyperactive until its internal systems establish new circulation patterns adapted to life without rotation. The Pacific Ocean covers 170 million square miles and has been quietly sitting in the same general location for about 200 million years, minding its own business and supporting whales. But this apparent stillness masks a staggering truth. Every drop of Pacific seawater currently races eastward at speeds approaching 1,000 miles per hour near the equator. That's roughly 170 million square miles of water, all moving together in perfect liquid synchronization. Like the world's most massive conga line that nobody realizes they're part of. When Earth stops spinning, the Pacific doesn't get the memo. This oceanic giant contains 14 million cubic kilometers of water, enough liquid to fill 2 to 87 billion Olympic swimming pools. All of this water suddenly finds itself moving eastward at supersonic speeds, while the ocean floor beneath it comes to a complete stop. The result would be the most spectacular tsunami in planetary history. Except calling it a tsunami doesn't do it justice. This would be more like the Pacific Ocean deciding to take a vacation and visit the Asian mainland all at once. The physics of this oceanic relocation project are genuinely mind-bending. Water doesn't compress like air, and it doesn't break apart like solid rock. Instead, it flows with the unstoppable persistence of liquid momentum. The entire Pacific would essentially become one massive wave. But not the kind that surfers dream about. This would be a wave taller than most mountains, stretching from Alaska to Antarctica, moving eastward at speeds that would make jet aircraft look sluggish. The Western Pacific Rim would experience something that has no precedent in geological history. Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, and coastal China would face a wall of water moving faster than commercial airliners. This isn't a traditional tsunami that builds height as it approaches shore. This is the entire Pacific Ocean depth arriving horizontally. Coastal regions wouldn't just flood. They would disappear beneath miles of displaced seawater moving at hypersonic speeds. But here's where this oceanic nightmare gets even more surreal. The Pacific wouldn't just slosh eastward once and settle down. Water has momentum, and momentum doesn't disappear easily. After the initial eastward surge, the displaced ocean would encounter the western coasts of North and South America. Unable to travel further east, this impossible volume of water would have nowhere to go but up. Coastal mountain ranges from Alaska to Chile would find themselves temporarily underwater. The Pacific tries to figure out where to put itself in a world without rotation. Perhaps most remarkably, this oceanic relocation would create temporary inland seas in places that have been dry land for millions of years. The Great Plains of North America could become a temporary ocean as displaced Pacific water searches for new equilibrium positions. Denver, Colorado might briefly become a coastal city. The Pacific explores real estate options it's never considered before. Right now, you're breathing air that's secretly traveling faster than the most powerful hurricane winds ever recorded. The atmosphere rotates with Earth at speeds that would terrify any meteorologist if they suddenly became visible. Near the equator, the air molecules zip eastward at roughly 1,200 miles per hour, fast enough to circle the entire planet in about 20 hours. When Earth stops spinning, the atmosphere gets no advance warning about this change in cosmic policy. Atmospheric physics operates by rules that make this scenario particularly nightmarish. Unlike solid objects that can break apart or liquids that can splash around, gases respond to momentum changes by creating pressure waves. These are wind speeds that challenge our understanding of what's meteorologically possible. The entire atmosphere would essentially become one planet-spanning hurricane, with wind speeds that dwarf anything in recorded history. Hurricane Category 5 storms top out at 200 miles per hour. This atmospheric stampede would feature sustained winds 6 times more powerful. The stratosphere, that peaceful layer of atmosphere where commercial aircraft cruise, would become a supersonic wind tunnel. Air traffic control would face the ultimate nightmare scenario. The medium that supports flight itself becomes more turbulent than the inside of a tornado. But aircraft would be the least of anyone's concerns. The troposphere would transform into a global wind system moving at hypersonic speeds. These aren't ordinary winds that might blow your roof off or uproot a few trees. At 1,200 miles per hour, moving air becomes an erosive force comparable to industrial sandblasting. Anything exposed to this atmospheric assault would be scarred down to bedrock within hours. Topsoil that took thousands of years to develop would disappear eastward in minutes. Forests would be stripped bare and then blown away entirely. Even solid rock surfaces would experience significant erosion as the atmosphere becomes nature's most aggressive power washer. What makes this atmospheric catastrophe truly global is how it would redistribute everything that was previously settled on Earth's surface. Dust, sand, leaves, debris, and anything else not firmly anchored to the planet would join this eastward aerial migration. The entire atmosphere would become a high-speed delivery system. It would transport material from western regions to eastern destinations with the efficiency of a cosmic conveyor belt operating at supersonic speeds. The eastern sides of all continents would receive this airborne cargo delivery whether they wanted it or not. Asia would be buried under dust from Africa. North America's eastern seaboard would disappear beneath soil blown in from the Great Plains. Australia's eastern coast would receive a generous donation of red dirt from the outback. The atmosphere would essentially reorganize the surface of the planet, moving loose material eastward with the persistence of a global dust storm that refuses to settle down. Forget everything you know about ocean locations. For billions of years, we've assumed that the Atlantic stays put between Europe and America. The Pacific minds its own business between Asia and the Americas. The Indian Ocean politely occupies the space between Africa and Australia. But Earth's rotation has been secretly organizing this aquatic real estate arrangement. Remove the spin, and every ocean on the planet suddenly decides to relocate to the eastern suburbs of their former neighborhoods. This oceanic moving day would create the most dramatic redistribution of water in planetary history. the western coasts of every continent would experience something that maps simply can't prepare you for. Their oceans would pack up and leave. California's Pacific coastline would become beachfront property with no beach and no ocean. The waves that have been crashing against Big Sur for millions of years would suddenly be racing eastward at jet aircraft speeds, leaving behind empty ocean basins and very confused marine life. Meanwhile, the eastern coasts of continents would receive surprise oceanic visitors they never invited. The Atlantic seaboard from Maine to Georgia would face rising sea levels. It would also face the arrival of entire displaced oceans moving at hypersonic speeds. Coastal cities like New York, Miami, and Boston would find themselves in the path of liquid walls taller than most skyscrapers, all traveling eastward with the momentum of planetary rotation suddenly made visible. The numbers behind this aquatic relocation project are genuinely staggering. Earth's oceans contain 1.37 billion cubic kilometers of water. That's enough liquid to cover the entire United States to a depth of 90 miles. All of this water would simultaneously decide to migrate eastward, creating temporary water mountains in some regions while leaving empty ocean basins in others. The Dead Sea would become impressively dead as it loses its water entirely. Meanwhile, the Sahara Desert might temporarily become the Sahara Sea. Displaced Atlantic water goes exploring. But here's where this oceanic chaos creates an even more bizarre scenario. Water seeks its own level, but it takes time to find equilibrium when the entire planetary water system suddenly changes addresses. For weeks or months after the initial displacement, massive water currents would flow around the globe. The oceans try to figure out their new living arrangements. Some regions would experience cycles of flooding and draining as displaced water searches for stable locations. The continents themselves would become temporary islands in seas of displaced water. Mountain ranges that have been landlocked for millions of years would suddenly develop oceanfront property. The Rocky Mountains might become a chain of islands surrounded by displaced Pacific water. The Andes could serve as a continental spine separating temporary eastern and western seas. Earth's geography would be temporarily rewritten as water and land renegotiate their boundaries in a world without the organizational force of planetary rotation. Breathing seems pretty straightforward under normal circumstances. Air goes in, air goes out, and your lungs barely have to think about the process. But atmospheric pressure depends on stable air distribution patterns that have remained constant throughout human evolutionary history. When the atmosphere suddenly redistributes itself across the planet at supersonic speeds, breathing transforms from an unconscious reflex into a physiological challenge, one that would test the limits of human survival. The moving atmosphere would create pressure differentials unlike anything experienced in Earth's history. Massive volumes of air would race eastward at 1,200 miles per hour. They would pile up against geographical barriers like mountain ranges and continental coastlines. This atmospheric traffic jam would create pressure zones where air density increases dramatically. Meanwhile, the regions that air is fleeing would experience rapidly dropping pressure. Their atmospheric inventory relocates eastward without replacement. Your ears would be the first to protest these dramatic pressure changes. Human eardrums can handle relatively minor pressure variations, like those experienced during airplane flights or elevator rides. But when atmospheric pressure changes rapidly across ranges comparable to climbing Mount Everest in seconds, eardrums respond with pain. pain that would make any migraine feel gentle by comparison. The pressure differential would be severe enough to rupture eardrums entirely, leaving survivors deaf in a world where hearing might be crucial for avoiding other atmospheric hazards. Breathing mechanics would become exponentially more difficult as air density fluctuates wildly. In high-pressure zones where eastward moving air accumulates, every breath would feel like trying to inhale thick soup. The air would be so dense that lungs would struggle to expand against the atmospheric weight pressing down from all directions. Meanwhile, low-pressure zones abandoned by fleeing air would offer atmosphere that is painfully thin. Breathing would feel like trying to get oxygen on top of Mount Everest, except without the gradual acclimatization that mountain climbers rely on. But the respiratory challenges extend beyond simple pressure changes. Moving air at these speeds would heat up significantly due to friction and compression. The atmosphere itself would become uncomfortably warm as 1,200 miles per hour winds generate thermal energy through atmospheric friction. Breathing this superheated air would scald lung tissue and make every inhalation painful. The air that sustains life would temporarily become hostile to the life it normally supports. Perhaps most disturbingly, these atmospheric pressure changes would affect human consciousness directly. Rapid pressure drops cause a condition similar to decompression sickness. Dissolved gases in blood form bubbles that interfere with circulation. Meanwhile, extreme pressure increases would force unusual amounts of gases into bloodstream solution, potentially causing nitrogen narcosis similar to what deep-sea divers experience. Survivors of Earth's rotational stop would have to remain conscious and functional. Their atmospheric environment would actively work against basic physiological processes that normally operate automatically. Every grain of sand on every beach is currently traveling at jet aircraft speeds without making a sound. Every fallen leaf, every speck of dust, every loose pebble on Earth's surface shares the same hidden velocity as mountains and oceans. Under normal circumstances, this cosmic hitchhiking remains invisible because everything moves together in perfect synchronization. But when Earth stops spinning, every small object on the planet suddenly becomes part of the most dangerous debris storm in planetary history. The scale of this projectile apocalypse defies comprehension. Earth's surface contains billions of tons of loose material that isn't firmly anchored to bedrock. Sand dunes, gravel deposits, fallen branches, roof tiles, park benches, parked cars, playground equipment. Essentially everything that isn't permanently attached to the planet's crust would join this eastward migration at hypersonic speeds. The atmosphere would become a high-velocity delivery system for every loose object on Earth's surface. Dust particles might seem harmless under normal circumstances, but at 1,000 miles per hour, they become abrasive missiles capable of sandblasting exposed surfaces. Desert regions would contribute massive dust clouds to this atmospheric artillery barrage. The Sahara Desert would donate millions of tons of sand to this global debris storm. Meanwhile, agricultural regions would add topsoil, fallen leaves, and organic matter to the supersonic projectile inventory. The sonic boom phenomenon would make this debris storm audible long before it becomes visible. Individual objects traveling faster than the speed of sound create shock waves as they displace air molecules. Now imagine millions of debris pieces all breaking the sound barrier simultaneously. The combined acoustic assault would be deafening, a continuous thunder that would make normal conversation impossible and could cause permanent hearing damage to anyone exposed to this aerial artillery demonstration. Track. Urban areas would contribute their own specialized ammunition to this high-speed debris collection. Loose roof tiles would become ceramic missiles. Parked cars would transform into multi-ton projectiles. Street signs, mailboxes, fire hydrants, and anything else not firmly rooted in concrete foundations would join the eastward exodus. Cities would essentially disassemble themselves and relocate their components several hundred miles to the east. Piece by supersonic piece. What makes this debris storm truly terrifying is its duration. Unlike a tornado or hurricane that passes through an area in hours, this global projectile bombardment would continue. It would last until friction and air resistance finally slow the debris to manageable speeds. The eastern slopes of mountain ranges would serve as collection points for this supersonic delivery service, gradually accumulating massive deposits of mixed debris from western regions. Entire landscapes would be buried under layers of high-speed immigrants from distant locations, creating geological formations that would puzzle future archaeologists. They would try to understand how fragments of the Eiffel Tower ended up scattered across the plains of Eastern Europe. Imagine the most intense summer day you've ever experienced. Now multiply that heat by 10 and make it last for 6 straight months. There is not a single night of cooling relief. That's the new reality for anyone unlucky enough to live on Earth's permanent day side after rotation stops. The sun would hang motionless in the sky like a cosmic heat lamp that somebody forgot to turn off, baking everything beneath it with the relentless efficiency of a planetary oven set to incinerate. Without Earth's rotation providing the mercy of nightfall, the day side would experience something that has no precedent in terrestrial history. Surface temperatures would climb steadily toward 175 degrees Fahrenheit as solar energy accumulates without any cooling breaks. That's hot enough to kill most life forms within hours. Approaching the temperature where water begins to boil at sea level. The equatorial regions would become furnaces that make Death Valley's hottest days feel like a pleasant spring afternoon. The atmosphere itself would become a participant in this thermal nightmare. Superheated air would create convection currents more violent than any hurricane, generating winds that redistribute the scorching heat across the entire day side. These thermal winds would carry temperatures approaching 200 degrees Fahrenheit to regions that normally experience temperate climates. Scotland would bake under heat that makes the Sahara Desert seem comfortable by comparison. Plant life would face a death sentence that unfolds in agonizing slow motion. Every tree, shrub, and blade of grass on the day side would first wilt, then dry out completely, finally burst into spontaneous combustion as the accumulated solar energy turns entire forests into continental bonfires. The Amazon rainforest would transform into a smoking wasteland within weeks. Agricultural regions would become barren deserts where the soil itself cracks and turns to dust under relentless solar punishment. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this solar sauna experience is how it would affect the water cycle. Every lake, river, and stream on the day side would begin evaporating at rates that empty entire watersheds within months. The Mediterranean Sea would gradually disappear as its water boils away into the superheated atmosphere. The Great Lakes would become salt flats dotted with the skeletal remains of ships and docks. Any body of water smaller than an ocean would simply vanish, leaving behind cracked earth and mineral deposits that mark where liquid water once provided life-sustaining moisture. The few humans who might initially survive this solar assault would face challenges that make desert survival look easy. Finding water becomes impossible when every natural source has evaporated. Seeking shelter provides little relief when the air itself approaches lethal temperatures. Even underground bunkers would gradually heat up as the sun's energy penetrates deeper into the Earth's crust. The day side of a motionless Earth would become the closest thing to hell that physics can actually deliver. While half the planet bakes in solar purgatory, the other hemisphere would plunge into a darkness so profound. It would redefine our understanding of terrestrial winter. Without any solar energy to provide warmth, the night side would radiate its accumulated heat into space with nothing to replace it. Temperatures would plummet past anything recorded in Earth's climate history, reaching levels that make Antarctic winter storms feel like tropical vacations. The night side would experience temperature drops that challenge the survival limits of any known life form. Surface temperatures would cascade past minus 150 degrees Fahrenheit and continue falling for months. Heat escapes into the cosmic vacuum. These aren't just uncomfortable cold snaps. These are temperatures that approach what scientists call absolute biological impossibility. At these frigid extremes, human blood would freeze solid within minutes of exposure. Breathing the air would cause immediate lung damage from supercooled atmospheric gases. But here's where this cosmic deep freeze becomes truly alien. The atmosphere itself would begin to freeze and fall from the sky like snow. Water vapor would crystallize instantly into ice particles so fine they'd create atmospheric blizzards of frozen air. Carbon dioxide would reach its freezing point and begin forming dry ice deposits on the ground. Eventually, even oxygen and nitrogen would start to liquefy and rain down as liquid gases that freeze solid upon contact with the supercooled surface. This atmospheric precipitation would create landscapes that belong more in science fiction than on Earth. Imagine blizzards where the snow consists of frozen air molecules rather than water crystals. Picture lakes of liquid oxygen forming in low-lying areas before freezing into solid deposits that would be lethal to touch. The night side would develop an entirely new type of geology based on frozen atmospheric gases rather than traditional rock and soil formations. The absence of any warming mechanism would create a runaway cooling effect that feeds on itself. As more atmospheric gases freeze out of the air, the remaining atmosphere becomes thinner and less capable of retaining what little heat remains. This creates a feedback loop where cold generates more cold, until the night side approaches the temperature of deep space itself. The dark hemisphere would essentially become an Earth-sized refrigerator operating at cosmic temperatures. Perhaps most remarkably, this extreme cold would preserve everything on the night side like a planetary museum frozen in time. Any plants, animals, or human structures caught in this cosmic deep freeze would remain perfectly preserved for thousands of years. Cities would become ice sculptures containing the frozen remains of civilizations. They could not adapt to a world where half the planet becomes colder than interplanetary space. The night side would serve as a frozen archaeological record of Earth's final day as a rotating planet. Between the solar furnace and the cosmic freezer lies Earth's most valuable real estate. A narrow band of perpetual twilight where the sun hangs forever at the horizon like a cosmic lighthouse, marking the boundary between heaven and hell. This twilight zone would become the planet's only habitable region, a strip roughly 300 miles wide that circles the globe like a life-preserving belt wrapped around a dying world. Within this precious twilight band, temperatures would hover in the narrow range where liquid water can exist and complex life can survive. The eternal sunset conditions would provide just enough solar energy to prevent the extreme freezing of the dark side, while avoiding the lethal heat of the permanent day side. This region would experience a climate similar to a pleasant autumn evening that never ends. Cool enough to be comfortable, warm enough to sustain life. The weather patterns within this survival strip would be unlike anything experienced in Earth's normal climate history. Massive thermal winds would constantly blow from the scorching day side toward the frozen night side, carrying superheated air across the twilight zone before cooling and descending into the frigid darkness beyond. These atmospheric rivers would create a unique microclimate where the same location experiences both desert winds and Arctic breezes within the same day. This meteorological mixing would generate the planet's only remaining precipitation. Moisture evaporated from the day side would encounter the cooling temperatures of the twilight zone. Clouds would form in narrow bands along the temperature gradient, providing sporadic rainfall that would be more precious than any mineral resource. The twilight strip would contain Earth's entire remaining water cycle. It would be compressed into a narrow geographical band where evaporation, condensation, and precipitation could still occur naturally. But life in this cosmic refugee camp would face challenges that test the limits of biological adaptation. Plants would need to survive on the dim light of perpetual sunset, receiving perhaps 5% of the solar energy they normally require for photosynthesis. Animals would need to adapt to a world where the sun never moves, eliminating the circadian rhythms that have regulated biological processes for billions of years. Any surviving humans would become permanent nomads, following the twilight zone as Earth's continued orbit around the sun gradually shifts which regions receive the life-sustaining balance of light and temperature. The psychological effects of living in eternal twilight would challenge human mental health in ways never before experienced. No sunrise to mark new beginnings. No sunset to signal rest. Just an endless dusk that stretches across months and years. The few survivors would need to completely reinvent their relationship with time and light. They would still need to maintain the technology and knowledge necessary for long-term survival in humanity's final neighborhood. Earth's continued orbit around the sun would create a new type of seasonal change that makes our current weather variations look laughably mild. As our planet travels its yearly path through space, the hemisphere receiving eternal sunlight would gradually switch places with the hemisphere experiencing cosmic winter. This creates the most extreme seasonal transition in planetary history, a semi-annual climate flip that exposes every location to both furnace-like heat and interplanetary cold within the same year. A picture experiencing summer temperatures of 175 degrees Fahrenheit, followed by winter temperatures of minus 150 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a seasonal temperature swing of 325 degrees, roughly equivalent to the difference between boiling water and frozen carbon dioxide. Every location on Earth would oscillate between these thermal extremes with each orbit around the sun, creating annual climate cycles that would challenge the survival strategies of any conceivable life form. The transition periods between these extreme seasons would be almost as deadly as the seasons themselves. As the boundary between day and night slowly migrates across Earth's surface, every region would experience several weeks of gradual but dramatic temperature change. Areas transitioning from 6 months of darkness to 6 months of sunlight would watch their frozen landscapes thaw in flood. Then they would bake into desert conditions within a matter of weeks. The opposite transition would see lush or barren regions gradually freeze into solid ice as solar energy abandons them for another hemisphere. These temperature transitions would trigger geological activity that makes normal seasonal changes seem peaceful. Rocks expand when heated and contract when cooled. But the extreme temperature swings on a motionless Earth would subject surface materials to thermal stress beyond anything in geological history. Mountain faces would crack and crumble as they alternate between thermal expansion and contraction. Coastal regions would experience massive landslides as formerly frozen cliff faces thaw and lose structural integrity. The atmosphere would become a participant in this thermal chaos, generating wind systems more violent than any hurricane. Air masses of dramatically different temperatures would collide along the moving boundary between hot and cold hemispheres. These thermal winds would create permanent storm systems that circle the planet along the temperature transition zone, generating tornadoes and cyclones that persist for months as the seasonal boundary slowly migrates around the globe. Perhaps most remarkably, any surviving life would need to migrate constantly to remain within the narrow temperature zone that allows biological processes to function. Animals would become permanent refugees, following the twilight zone around the planet twice each year to avoid both the lethal heat and the cosmic cold. Plants couldn't migrate, so they would simply die and be replaced by new growth as the habitable zone passes through different geographical regions. Earth would become a planet where life exists only as a narrow band of refugees. They would flee the extreme temperatures that chase them around the globe with each seasonal transition. The water evaporating from Earth's day side has to go somewhere. Physics provides a destination more spectacular than any natural wonder in terrestrial history. Massive volumes of superheated water vapor would rise from the solar furnace hemisphere. Atmospheric circulation would carry this moisture toward the cosmic freezer on the dark side. When this water-laden air encounters the extreme cold of the night hemisphere, it creates precipitation events that would redefine our understanding of weather. This isn't ordinary rainfall or even normal snowfall. When water vapor heated to temperatures approaching 200 degrees Fahrenheit suddenly encounters air cooled to minus 150 degrees Fahrenheit, it crystallizes instantly into ice formations that grow with the speed and scale of geological mountains. The temperature differential is so extreme that water doesn't gradually condense into clouds and then fall as snow. It flash freezes into solid ice masses that accumulate faster than any known natural process. These atmospheric waterfalls would create ice mountains that grow thousands of feet tall within weeks. Picture Niagara Falls made of frozen water vapor, except the falls are 30,000 feet high and the rushing water is replaced by cascades of crystallizing atmospheric moisture. The boundary between the hot and cold hemispheres would develop mountain ranges made entirely of accumulated ice, built from water that evaporated from oceans and lakes on the day side and then froze instantly upon reaching the night side. The scale of this ice construction project would dwarf any geological formation in Earth's history. The Himalayas took millions of years to reach their current height through gradual tectonic processes. These atmospheric ice mountains would achieve comparable elevations within a few years. The continuous evaporation precipitation cycle moves massive volumes of water from the hot hemisphere to the cold hemisphere. Entire continents on the night side would disappear beneath ice caps that accumulate from atmospheric moisture rather than gradual snowfall. But these ice formations would create their own weather systems that amplify the already extreme climate chaos. Ice mountains 30,000 feet tall would disrupt atmospheric circulation patterns, creating wind systems and pressure zones that generate storms unlike anything in meteorological records. The ice would reflect what little sunlight reaches the twilight zone, creating feedback effects that make the cold side even colder and the thermal gradients even more extreme. Perhaps most remarkably, these ice mountains would serve as massive repositories for Earth's water supply. As the day side continues to evaporate its surface water, that moisture would accumulate as solid ice on the night side. It would not return to liquid form. Over time, the hot hemisphere would become increasingly arid while the cold hemisphere develops ice formations that contain most of the planet's freshwater reserves. Earth would essentially separate its water into two extreme states: superheated vapor on one side and solid ice mountains on the other. Liquid water would exist only in the narrow twilight zone. Their temperatures allow both ice and vapor to coexist as the liquid that life requires for survival. Earth would develop the most powerful and persistent wind system in planetary history. The 325-degree temperature difference between day and night sides creates atmospheric pressure gradients that make our current weather systems look gentle by comparison. Hot air from the 175-degree day side would rush toward the -150-degree night side. It would do it with the relentless determination of physics, trying to balance the most extreme temperature differential any planet has ever experienced. These aren't ordinary winds that might knock down a few trees or rattle some windows. The thermal gradient between Earth's solar furnace and cosmic freezer would generate sustained wind speeds approaching 300 miles per hour. It would make every day feel like living inside a permanent Category 5 hurricane, one that never moves on to terrorize some other location. The entire atmosphere would become a gigantic conveyor belt moving superheated air from the day side toward the night side. It would do it in a desperate attempt to equalize temperatures that can never actually be equalized. The physics behind this atmospheric chaos are elegantly simple but terrifyingly powerful. Hot air rises and expands, creating low-pressure zones that suck in more air from surrounding regions. Cold air sinks and compresses, creating high-pressure zones that push air toward areas of lower pressure. When half a planet heats up to oven temperatures, the other half cools to interplanetary conditions. That contrast creates pressure differentials that generate winds beyond meteorological records. But these aren't chaotic storm systems that form and dissipate randomly. This would be organized atmospheric circulation. It would operate like a planetary-scale engine powered by temperature differences. The hot side would continuously generate rising air currents. They would flow toward the cold side at high altitude. Then they would descend and return to the hot side at ground level to complete the circulation pattern. Earth would essentially become a massive convection cell where the entire atmosphere participates in a single, planet-spanning weather system. The sound of this global wind machine would be audible from hundreds of miles away. Imagine the roar of a jet engine that never turns off, multiplied by thousands and spread across entire continents. The atmospheric howling would create a permanent background noise that makes normal conversation impossible without shouting. Any surviving humans would live in a world where the wind never stops screaming, creating acoustic conditions that would make sleep difficult and communication challenging. Perhaps most remarkably, these thermal winds would carry more than just air molecules. The 300-mile-per-hour sustained winds would transport massive volumes of dust, debris, moisture, and atmospheric gases. They would move them from the day side to the night side. This creates a permanent global delivery system where everything loose on the hot hemisphere gradually migrates to the cold hemisphere via high-speed atmospheric shipping. Earth's weather would become a cosmic moving service that never takes a day off. Every drop of water on Earth's day side would join the most spectacular phase change migration in the planet's history, a 4.6 billion year history. As surface temperatures climb past 170 degrees Fahrenheit, the oceans, lakes, and rivers would begin evaporating fast. Liquid water would become atmospheric cargo, bound for the cosmic freezer on the night side. This isn't gradual evaporation like what creates normal clouds. This is industrial-scale water processing that turns entire seas into atmospheric freight trains hauling moisture toward the dark hemisphere. The Mediterranean Sea contains roughly 4.4 million cubic kilometers of water. Under normal circumstances, this massive body of water evaporates and refills through precipitation in balanced cycles that maintain relatively stable water levels. But when the day side becomes a solar furnace, the Mediterranean would transform into a giant evaporation facility operating at maximum capacity. Within months, this ancient sea would disappear entirely. It would leave behind salt deposits and the skeletal remains of coastal cities that once thrived along now non-existent shorelines. This atmospheric water transport system would operate with the efficiency of a cosmic assembly line. Water evaporates from the hot side. It rises into the upper atmosphere. It gets carried eastward by the 300-mile-per-hour thermal winds. It travels across the twilight zone. Then it encounters the extreme cold of the night side, where it instantly crystallizes into ice formations. The entire process would move Earth's liquid water from one hemisphere to the other via atmospheric shipping routes that operate continuously. But here's where this water migration becomes truly mind-bending in scale. The Pacific Ocean contains 14 million cubic kilometers of water, roughly half of all the water on Earth. As this oceanic giant evaporates into water vapor and migrates to the night side, it would accumulate as ice formations. Those formations would dwarf any geological feature in Earth's history. The night side would develop ice sheets thousands of feet thick, built entirely from water that evaporated from dayside oceans and lakes. The speed of this water relocation would challenge our understanding of hydrological cycles. Under normal conditions, water might take years or decades to complete the cycle from evaporation to precipitation and back to liquid form. But the extreme temperature differential would accelerate this process dramatically. Water could evaporate on the day side in the morning. It could fall as ice on the night side by evening. This would create a rapid transit water cycle that moves planetary water reserves from to hemisphere in a matter of hours rather than seasons. Perhaps most remarkably, this atmospheric water migration would gradually drain the day side of its liquid water reserves while building massive ice continents on the night side. The solar furnace hemisphere would become increasingly arid as its water supply gets shipped to the cosmic freezer hemisphere via high-speed atmospheric delivery. Earth would develop a hydrological system where water exists primarily as superheated vapor on one side and solid ice on the other, with liquid water surviving only in the narrow twilight zone where temperatures allow all three phases to coexist. Between the waterless desert of the day side and the frozen ocean of the night side, a narrow band of liquid water would flow. It would be Earth's most precious river system. This twilight zone water belt would represent the planet's entire remaining liquid water supply. It would be compressed into a 300-mile-wide strip that circles the globe like a life-sustaining moat around a dying world. Every drop of drinkable water on Earth would be concentrated in this thin geographical band, where temperatures remain within the narrow range that allows H2O to exist as a liquid. This liquid water zone would operate under hydrological rules that have no precedent in Earth's climate history. Water vapor from the evaporating day side would condense into liquid droplets as it encounters the cooler temperatures of the twilight region. Meanwhile, ice from the frozen night side would melt at the edges where it meets the slightly warmer twilight air. The result would be a continuous cycle of condensation and melting that maintains liquid water flow along the temperature boundary. The geography of this water belt would create the planet's most unusual river system. Instead of flowing downhill toward the ocean like normal rivers, this liquid water would flow along the twilight zone boundary. It would follow the temperature gradient that circles the entire planet. The river would be hundreds of miles wide, but only a few inches deep in most places, creating vast, shallow wetlands where water collects in the temperature sweet spot between the extremes on either side. These twilight wetlands would become Earth's most valuable real estate and humanity's final frontier for survival. Any remaining plant life would concentrate in these water-rich zones. They would create narrow bands of vegetation that follow the liquid water availability. Animals would become permanent refugees, migrating constantly to stay within the water belt. Earth's orbit would gradually shift the temperature boundary around the planet twice each year. The water quality in this final river system would face constant challenges from the extreme conditions on either side. Contamination from day-side evaporation would introduce dissolved minerals and salts that accumulate as water vapor condenses in the twilight zone. Meanwhile, melting ice from the night side would contribute to flooding that dilutes and redistributes the available liquid water. Survivors would need to develop new water purification technologies to extract drinkable water from this contaminated but irreplaceable liquid supply. Perhaps most poignantly, this twilight river would represent humanity's final connection to the water cycle that has sustained life on Earth for billions of years. In a world where oceans have evaporated and continents have frozen solid, this narrow band of liquid water would be all that remains of Earth's once abundant hydrosphere. The sound of flowing water, once taken for granted across the entire planet, would exist only in this thin strip. It would be where the last of Earth's liquid heritage clings to existence in a world that has forgotten how to make rain. The night side of a motionless Earth would experience weather patterns so bizarre they challenge our basic understanding of atmospheric science. As temperatures drop below -150 degrees Fahrenheit, the atmosphere itself would begin to freeze and fall from the sky like the world's most unusual precipitation. This isn't water freezing into snow or ice. This is the actual air we breathe crystallizing into solid form and raining down as atmospheric snowflakes made of frozen oxygen and nitrogen. The physics behind this aerial chemistry experiment are both elegant and terrifying. Every gas has a temperature at which it transitions from vapor to liquid and then from liquid to solid. Water vapor freezes into ice at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, but oxygen doesn't become a liquid until temperatures drop to -297 degrees Fahrenheit. Nitrogen liquefies at -320 degrees Fahrenheit. The night side wouldn't reach these extreme temperatures initially, but it would get close enough to create atmospheric precipitation events that exist nowhere else in the solar system. Carbon dioxide would be the first atmospheric gas to join this frozen weather parade. At -109 degrees Fahrenheit, CO2 transitions directly from gas to solid, creating dry ice deposits on the night side surface. As temperatures continue falling, water vapor that manages to reach the dark hemisphere would instantly crystallize into ice formations. They would accumulate faster than any natural snowfall. The night side would develop blizzards where the snow consists of multiple types of frozen gases rather than simple frozen water. But here's where this atmospheric weather becomes truly alien. As the night side loses more and more of its atmospheric gases to freezing precipitation, the remaining air becomes thinner and less capable of retaining heat. This creates a feedback loop where atmospheric loss accelerates cooling. Then it accelerates more atmospheric loss. The night side would gradually develop surface conditions similar to the thin, cold atmosphere of Mars. Except the process would happen over months rather than geological ages. The strangest aspect of this gaseous weather would be the variety of snow types falling from the sky. Early in the cooling process, dry ice snow made of frozen carbon dioxide would dust the landscape with white deposits. These deposits would sublimate directly back into gas form when touched. Later, as temperatures continue dropping, actual ice snow made of frozen water vapor would create more familiar-looking but much colder precipitation. Eventually, the air itself would become so cold that oxygen begins to condense into liquid droplets that freeze before hitting the ground. Perhaps most remarkably, this atmospheric precipitation would preserve itself like a geological record of Earth's dying breath. Each layer of frozen gases would represent a different stage in the night side's cooling process. Future explorers, if any exist, could dig through deposits of frozen carbon dioxide, ice, and eventually liquid oxygen. They could read the atmospheric history of Earth's transition from a living planet to a world where the air itself falls from the sky and accumulates on the ground like snow, made of the breath that life once used to survive. Earth has been maintaining the same basic body shape for billions of years. It sports a subtle but noticeable bulge around its equatorial midsection. This makes our planet look like a cosmic sphere gently squeezed from the top and bottom. This planetary spare tire exists because Earth's rotation creates centrifugal forces that push material outward at the equator. This makes our planet roughly 26 miles wider than it is tall. When rotation stops, Earth would essentially go on the most dramatic diet and exercise program in planetary history. Without centrifugal force constantly pushing equatorial material outward, gravity would finally get its chance to pull everything toward Earth's center with unopposed determination. The equatorial bulge that has defined our planet's shape since rotation began would gradually collapse inward. Billions of tons of rock soil and sediment would surrender to gravitational attraction. The equator would sink around 10 miles closer to Earth's center. This would create a planetary waistline that makes our current sphere look positively rotten by comparison. But here's where Earth's makeover becomes even more dramatic. As material flows away from the equatorial regions, it does not simply disappear into cosmic space. Instead, it redistributes toward the polar regions. This would create mountain-like bulges at the North and South poles. The poles would rise around 10 miles higher than their current elevation. Earth's mass would reorganize into a shape that reflects pure gravitational attraction without rotational interference. This planetary body reshaping would trigger geological upheavals that make normal mountain-building processes look gentle. Massive earthquakes would ripple around the equatorial belt as the ground sinks beneath the feet of anyone living in tropical regions. Meanwhile, the polar regions would experience their own seismic chaos. The crust would rise and buckle under the pressure of accumulated material flowing in from equatorial regions. The timeline for this planetary diet plan would unfold over thousands of years. It would create slow-motion geological drama that spans multiple human generations. Children born in equatorial regions would grow up watching their homeland gradually sink lower each year. Polar communities would experience the opposite phenomenon. They would watch their neighborhoods slowly rise toward the sky as Earth's mass redistribution project continues its patient work of reshaping an entire planet. Perhaps most remarkably, this shape change would affect Earth's gravitational field in subtle but measurable ways. The altered mass distribution would create slight variations in gravitational strength at different latitudes. Equatorial regions would experience marginally stronger gravity. They move closer to Earth's center. Polar regions would experience slightly weaker gravity as they rise farther from the planetary core. Earth would develop a gravitational personality that varies by geographic location. It would create a world where your weight depends not just on your diet, but on your latitude. For billions of years, Earth's oceans have been content to spread themselves relatively evenly around the planet. Sea level maintains rough consistency from equator to poles, but this aquatic arrangement depends on centrifugal forces that help keep water distributed across the entire planetary surface. When Earth stops spinning, the oceans would discover they have strong preferences for polar real estate. This would trigger the largest migration of water in geological history. Without centrifugal force pushing water toward the equatorial bulge, Earth's liquid assets would begin flowing toward the poles, with the determination of cosmic gravity finally getting its way. This oceanic relocation project would operate like the world's most massive plumbing system. Water gradually drains from equatorial regions and accumulates in polar areas. The result would be a complete redistribution of Earth's water supply. It would create new continents in some regions, while drowning others beneath unprecedented sea levels. The equatorial regions would experience the most dramatic transformation as ocean water abandons tropical latitudes for polar destinations. The Atlantic Ocean between Africa and South America would gradually shrink as water flows toward the Arctic and Antarctic. The Pacific Ocean's equatorial regions would become shallower year by year. This vast water body would redistribute itself toward the poles. Within a few thousand years, entirely new land masses would emerge from former ocean floors as equatorial sea levels drop by hundreds of feet. Meanwhile, the polar regions would face the opposite aquatic apocalypse. The Arctic Ocean would expand dramatically as water from temperate and tropical regions flows northward under gravitational influence. Antarctica would find itself surrounded by seas deeper than any currently existing on Earth. These polar regions would develop ocean depths that dwarf current underwater geography. They would create abyssal plains and oceanic trenches that make the Mariana Trench look like a shallow puddle. This oceanic migration would redraw every map ever created. Coastal cities in equatorial regions would suddenly find themselves hundreds of miles inland as retreating seas expose continental shelves. Shelves that have been underwater for millions of years. Ships anchored in tropical harbors would find themselves sitting on dry land. The ocean would literally move away from their locations. Meanwhile, polar communities would watch rising seas gradually submerge their traditional territories beneath expanding polar oceans. The newly exposed equatorial land would reveal geological treasures that have been hidden beneath seawater since the continents first formed. Underwater mountain ranges would become surface features. Ancient coral reefs would become terrestrial fossil beds. The ocean floor sediments accumulated over millions of years would create new soil deposits. They would be ready for colonization by whatever plant life can adapt to the dramatically altered climate conditions. Earth would essentially gain new continents while losing others to the polar seas that expand to accommodate the planet's redistributed water supply. Every object on Earth, including your body, would suddenly become slightly but noticeably heavier the moment our planet stops spinning. This is not because Earth gains mass or because objects mysteriously add material to themselves. Instead, the disappearance of centrifugal force that has been subtly counteracting gravity for billions of years would allow Earth's gravitational pull to operate at its full strength, without rotational interference. Currently, Earth's rotation creates centrifugal force that partially opposes gravitational attraction. This is especially true at the equator, where rotational speed reaches its maximum. This hidden force reduces your effective weight by roughly 0.5% compared to what you would weigh on a non-rotating Earth. When the planet stops spinning, this concealed weight reduction disappears. Everyone suddenly experiences the full force of Earth's gravitational attraction without any centrifugal assistance. The change might seem minimal. 0.5% represents only about 1 pound of additional weight for an average adult. But this small increase would affect every physical activity that depends on overcoming gravitational force. Jumping would require slightly more effort to achieve the same height. Running would feel marginally more strenuous. Each step must lift slightly heavier legs against stronger gravitational pull. Even simple activities like climbing stairs would become fractionally more exhausting. Athletes would notice this gravitational enhancement most dramatically. High jumpers would find their personal records suddenly unreachable. The additional 0.5% gravitational pull would prevent them from achieving their previous heights. Basketball players would discover that dunking requires slightly more effort. Gymnasts would need to recalibrate their timing and strength to accommodate the enhanced gravitational resistance that makes every flip and vault marginally more challenging. But the weight increase extends far beyond human activities. Every bird would find flying slightly more difficult as the enhanced gravity increases the energy required to maintain altitude. Insects would burn more calories to achieve the same flight patterns. Even raindrops would fall slightly faster as the strengthened gravitational pull accelerates precipitation through the atmosphere with marginally more force. Perhaps most remarkably, this gravitational enhancement would affect the structural integrity of buildings and bridges designed under the assumption of current gravitational conditions. Engineers calculate load-bearing requirements based on existing gravitational forces. The 0.5% increase might seem trivial, but for massive structures already operating near their design limits, this additional gravitational stress could trigger structural failures. skyscrapers, suspension bridges, and large dams would all experience slightly more stress than their original engineering specifications anticipated, creating potential safety concerns for infrastructure that assumed gravitational force would remain constant throughout their operational lifespans. Deep beneath Earth's surface, a cosmic generator has been producing our planet's magnetic field for over 3 billion years. It does this with the reliability of the universe's most dependable power plant. This dynamo operates like a massive electrical dynamo powered by the circulation of molten iron in Earth's outer core. It creates the invisible magnetic shield that protects all life from deadly cosmic radiation. But this planetary defense system depends critically on Earth's rotation to organize the circulation patterns that generate our magnetic protection. When Earth stops spinning, the carefully orchestrated flow patterns of liquid metal in our planet's core would lose the rotational organization that has maintained stable magnetic field generation for billions of years. The molten iron currents that normally follow predictable circulation routes would collapse into chaotic turbulence. They would lose the Coriolis effects that Earth's rotation provides. Our planet's magnetic field would fluctuate wildly before eventually weakening to a fraction of its current strength. This magnetic field deterioration would expose Earth's atmosphere to cosmic radiation that has been deflected away from our planet throughout the entire history of complex life. High-energy particles from the solar wind would penetrate directly to Earth's surface. They would no longer be redirected around our planet by magnetic field lines. The northern and southern lights, normally confined to polar regions where magnetic field lines funnel cosmic particles, would become visible from every latitude. Earth's weakened magnetic shield would fail to confine aurora displays to their traditional polar neighborhoods. The immediate effects on human technology would be catastrophic. Satellites designed to operate within Earth's protective magnetic field would face radiation levels that would damage their electronic systems within days. GPS networks would fail as cosmic radiation disrupts satellite navigation systems. Communication satellites would gradually malfunction as their circuits suffer cumulative radiation damage that their shielding was never designed to withstand. But the long-term consequences extend far beyond technological failures. Without adequate magnetic field protection, Earth's atmosphere would begin slowly bleeding away into space. Solar wind strips away atmospheric molecules that are no longer protected by our planetary magnetic umbrella. This atmospheric erosion process transformed Mars from a potentially habitable world into the thin atmosphered desert planet we observe today. Earth would face the same gradual atmospheric loss, though the process would unfold over millions rather than thousands of years. Perhaps most visually spectacular, the enhanced cosmic radiation reaching Earth's surface would create aurora displays visible from every location on the planet. The sky would regularly glow with multicolored light shows as cosmic particles interact directly with atmospheric gases without magnetic field interference. Children growing up on a rotation-free Earth would consider constant aurora displays normal weather phenomena, unaware that these beautiful lights represent the visible evidence of their planet's failing magnetic defense system and the cosmic radiation that previous generations never had to face. Twice each day, roughly 50 trillion gallons of seawater participate in the most predictable dance on Earth. Tidal forces raise and lower ocean levels with the reliability of a cosmic metronome. But this aquatic ballet depends on two partners: The Moon's gravitational pull and Earth's rotation work together to create the complex tidal patterns that have shaped coastal ecosystems for billions of years. When Earth stopped spinning, this tidal partnership would lose half its choreographic power. It would create tide cycles that make current tidal ranges look dramatically energetic by comparison. Currently, Earth's rotation amplifies tidal effects by creating what oceanographers call rotational enhancement. The planet's spin interacts with lunar gravity to produce tidal ranges significantly larger than the Moon's gravitational pull alone could generate. This rotational boost creates the familiar twice-daily high and low tide cycles that many coastal regions experience. Remove Earth's rotation, and tidal ranges would shrink to roughly 1/3 of their current magnitude. The Bay of Fundy, famous for tidal ranges that can exceed 50 feet between high and low tide, would become a much less impressive tidal demonstration. Instead of the dramatic water level changes that currently make this region a tourist destination, the bay would experience tidal variations of perhaps 15 feet. Still noticeable, but far less spectacular than the current tidal extremes that can strand boats and expose vast expanses of seafloor twice each day. Coastal ecosystems that have evolved to exploit dramatic tidal ranges would face an environmental crisis that challenges millions of years of evolutionary adaptation. Intertidal zones, those coastal areas that alternate between underwater and exposed conditions, would shrink dramatically as reduced tidal ranges eliminate much of the habitat that countless species depend upon for feeding and reproduction. Countless species of shellfish, crabs, sea stars, and other marine life have evolved biological rhythms synchronized to current tidal patterns. Patterns that would no longer provide the environmental cues these organisms require. Commercial fishing industries that depend on tidal currents to concentrate fish populations would face economic catastrophe as weakened tidal flows fail to create the underwater current systems that drive marine food chains. Salmon runs that depend on tidal assistance to navigate coastal rivers would lose this natural transportation boost. Coastal bird species that time their feeding to coincide with low tide exposure of mudflats would find dramatically reduced feeding opportunities as smaller tidal ranges expose much less seafloor. Perhaps most poignantly, the reduced tidal ranges would eliminate many of the tidal pools that serve as miniature ocean ecosystems along rocky coastlines. These small pools of seawater, temporarily isolated during low tide, support incredibly diverse marine communities that exist nowhere else on Earth. With weaker tides that do not retreat as far, many of these pools would remain permanently submerged, destroying unique habitats that have fostered marine biodiversity for millions of years. The ocean would essentially forget how to create the temporary isolation that allows these specialized ecosystems to develop and thrive. Plants have been quietly producing oxygen through photosynthesis for over 2 billion years, maintaining the delicate atmospheric balance that allows complex life to breathe comfortably. But this biological oxygen factory operates under the assumption that day and night will alternate every 24 hours, providing plants with predictable cycles of photosynthesis and respiration. When Earth stops rotating and creates 6-month days followed by 6-month nights, this ancient biological rhythm would malfunction spectacularly, turning plants into manufacturers of atmospheric chaos. During the 6 months of continuous daylight, plants on the day side would experience photosynthetic overdrive unlike anything in evolutionary history. Without the mercy of nightfall to pause oxygen production, vegetation would pump out oxygen molecules 24 hours a day for half a year straight. The atmospheric oxygen concentration, currently a comfortable 21%, would climb steadily toward levels that transform the air itself into a fire hazard. At oxygen concentrations above 25%, even damp organic matter becomes highly flammable, turning entire forests into potential tinderboxes waiting for a single spark. But oxygen toxicity presents an even more immediate threat to the plants producing this excess gas. High oxygen concentrations damage plant cells through oxidative stress. Essentially, plants would begin poisoning themselves with their own waste product. Leaves would develop brown spots and cellular damage as excess oxygen molecules attack the very photosynthetic machinery that created them. Plants evolved to handle normal oxygen levels, not the atmospheric oxygen overload that 6 months of continuous photosynthesis would create. Meanwhile, the 6 months of total darkness would trigger the opposite biological catastrophe. Plants require sunlight for photosynthesis, but they need oxygen for cellular respiration just like animals do. During the eternal night, vegetation would continue consuming oxygen for basic metabolic functions while producing none to replace it. The atmospheric oxygen concentration would plummet as plants and surviving animals breathe through the oxygen reserves accumulated during the previous 6-month light period. This creates a deadly respiratory roller coaster where atmospheric oxygen swings between toxic overabundance and life-threatening scarcity twice each year. During the bright season, survivors would face the risk of oxygen poisoning and spontaneous combustion from hyperoxic air. During the dark season, they would struggle with oxygen deprivation. Atmospheric levels drop below the concentration needed to sustain complex life. Animals and humans would need to develop completely new breathing strategies to survive atmospheric conditions that oscillate between too much and too little of the gas that sustains life. Perhaps most remarkably, this oxygen chaos would eliminate most plant species within the first few cycles of extreme light and darkness. Plants cannot migrate to escape unsuitable conditions. Very few species could survive both oxygen toxicity and oxygen starvation within the same year. The botanical diversity that took hundreds of millions of years to evolve would collapse within decades, leaving behind only the most resilient species capable of surviving atmospheric conditions that alternate between poisonous abundance and deadly scarcity. Every species currently living on Earth evolved under the assumption that their environment would remain within certain livable parameters. Temperatures might fluctuate seasonally, but they wouldn't swing 300 degrees Fahrenheit within the same year. Day and night cycles might vary with the seasons, but they wouldn't last 6 months each. When Earth stops rotating, these basic environmental assumptions would shatter, triggering the most intense natural selection event in the planet's 4.6 billion year history. Terrestrial ecosystems would face a survival challenge that makes previous mass extinctions look gentle by comparison. The day side would become a heat-tolerance laboratory where only organisms capable of surviving 175-degree temperatures could remain. This eliminates virtually every known plant and animal species except for extremophiles, organisms that have evolved to thrive in conditions that kill everything else. The vast majority of Earth's biodiversity would simply cook to death during their first exposure to 6 months of continuous solar heating. The night side would operate as an equally ruthless cold tolerance testing facility. Temperatures approaching -150 degrees Fahrenheit would eliminate any organism that cannot either generate its own heat or enter a state of suspended animation that could last half a year. Most mammals and birds, despite their warm-blooded physiology, lack the metabolic capacity to maintain body temperature against such extreme cold for 6 continuous months, without any external heat source. But the survival challenge extends beyond simple temperature tolerance. Animals would need to solve the puzzle of finding food in environments where traditional food chains have completely collapsed. Herbivores would face starvation as plant communities die off in both the frozen night zones and the scorching day zones. Carnivores would lose their prey species as herbivore populations crash. Even omnivores would struggle to find edible material in landscapes where most organic matter has either frozen solid or burned to ash. The few species with any hope of survival would be those already adapted to extreme conditions. Desert animals like fennec foxes and kangaroo rats might survive longer in the dayside furnace due to their existing heat tolerance adaptations. Arctic animals like polar bears and Arctic foxes could potentially endure the night-side deep freeze. But even these specialized species would face the unprecedented challenge of surviving temperature swings that exceed the range of any existing terrestrial environment. Perhaps most tragically, this biological sorting process would eliminate most of the large, charismatic species that humans find most familiar and beloved. Elephants, lions, pandas, whales, eagles, and countless other iconic animals would lack the physiological adaptations necessary to survive Earth's new extreme climate cycles. The planet would lose most of its megafauna within the first few years, leaving behind a world dominated by microscopic organisms and the hardiest extremophile species that most people have never heard of. Migratory animals have been following seasonal climate patterns for millions of years. But their traditional migration routes assume that favorable conditions will remain in predictable locations for months at a time. Arctic terns currently hold the record for the longest migration, traveling roughly 44,000 miles annually as they follow summer conditions between the Arctic and Antarctic. But when Earth stops rotating, any animal hoping to survive would need to abandon traditional migration patterns and begin following the narrow twilight zone as it slowly circles the planet twice each year. This twilight zone migration would create the most demanding travel itinerary in natural history. As Earth orbits the Sun, the boundary between the scorching day side and frozen night side gradually shifts around the planet. Completing one full circuit every 6 months, animals would need to walk, fly, or swim approximately 25,000 miles just to stay within the narrow band of survivable temperatures. This represents a migration distance that dwarfs anything currently undertaken by any known species. The logistics of this perpetual exodus would challenge every survival strategy that animals have developed over millions of years of evolution. Traditional migration relies on animals building up fat reserves during abundant feeding periods, then drawing on these energy stores during the journey to new territories. But the twilight zone migration would never end, providing no opportunities for extended rest and recovery. Animals would need to find food continuously while maintaining the energy output required for constant travel. Flying animals might initially seem to have advantages in this global migration marathon, but the extreme weather conditions along the day-night boundary would create atmospheric turbulence that makes flight extremely hazardous. The 300 miles per hour thermal winds generated by temperature differences would create air currents more violent than any hurricane. Birds would need to navigate through constant atmospheric chaos while covering distances that exceed the flight range of most species. Ground-based migration would face equally daunting obstacles as animals encounter geographical barriers that cannot be circumnavigated within the time constraints of following the moving twilight zone. Mountain ranges, oceans, deserts, and ice fields would force migrating herds to make detours. Detours that could leave them stranded in lethal temperature zones. The Himalayas alone would represent a nearly insurmountable obstacle for any animal trying to maintain position within the narrow twilight survival band. Perhaps most poignantly, this forced global migration would break up family groups and social structures that many species depend upon for survival. Young animals that cannot maintain the punishing travel pace would be abandoned by herds that cannot afford to slow down. Elderly or injured animals would face the choice between attempting an impossible journey or staying behind to die in unsurvivable temperature extremes. The constant migration pressure would eliminate the stable social bonds that help many species raise offspring and share survival knowledge across generations. While surface life faces extinction in Earth's new temperature hell, a select group of organisms would barely notice that anything has changed on their planet. Deep underground and in the ocean's most remote depths, communities of extremophile organisms have been thriving in conditions that would instantly kill surface dwellers. These biological outcasts, previously relegated to Earth's most inhospitable environments, would suddenly find themselves inheriting a planet where their specialized survival skills make them the new dominant life forms. Deep-sea hydrothermal vents are underwater oases where superheated water rich in minerals erupts from the ocean floor. They would continue operating exactly as they have for millions of years. The organisms living around these vents derive their energy from chemical processes rather than photosynthesis. They include tube worms, sulfur-eating bacteria, and various other creatures that never see sunlight. Earth's rotational status is completely irrelevant to their lifestyle. They would continue their daily routines while the surface world collapses into chaos. Underground cave ecosystems would become Earth's most stable remaining habitats. Miles beneath the surface, temperatures remain constant year-round regardless of surface conditions. Cave-dwelling organisms like blind fish, albino crustaceans, and various bacterial communities would experience no disruption to their existing environmental conditions. The extreme temperature swings devastating surface life would not penetrate deeply enough underground to affect these subterranean communities. These underground survivors would inherit a planet with dramatically reduced competition for resources. Without surface plants producing organic matter, the food webs that sustain deep ecosystems would become even more dependent on chemosynthetic bacteria that create organic compounds from purely mineral sources. But this represents an expansion of opportunity rather than a crisis for organisms already adapted to life without sunlight. The deep ocean would become Earth's largest remaining biological refuge. Below depths of about 3,000 feet, ocean temperatures remain stable regardless of surface conditions. Deep-sea fish, bottom-dwelling invertebrates, and the countless microscopic organisms that form the foundation of deep ocean food webs would continue their existence largely unchanged. The surface catastrophe would have minimal impact on creatures that already live in perpetual darkness under crushing pressure. Perhaps most remarkably, these extremophile communities represent the only life forms on Earth with any possibility of long-term survival and eventual repopulation of surface environments. When Earth's surface eventually stabilizes into new climate patterns, it would be the descendants of these underground and deep-sea organisms that could potentially migrate upward and colonize the transformed surface world. The meek might inherit the Earth, but the extremophiles would inherit this version of Earth, where survival requires mastering conditions that would have seemed impossible to most life forms that evolved under the gentle climate conditions of a rotating planet. Human civilization has spent thousands of years building upward and outward, constructing soaring skyscrapers and sprawling cities that reach toward the sky like monuments to our technological ambitions. But when Earth's surface becomes a temperature torture chamber alternating between solar furnace and cosmic freezer, humanity would face the ultimate humbling experience. Abandoning everything we've built on the surface and moving into the planet's basement like cosmic refugees seeking shelter from our own atmosphere. Deep underground tunnels and cave systems would transform from tourist attractions and transportation infrastructure into humanity's most valuable real estate. Subway systems in major cities would suddenly become premium residential neighborhoods. Their controlled temperature environments provide the only livable spaces within hundreds of miles. The London Underground was designed to move commuters between surface destinations. It would become a subterranean city where train platforms serve as main streets. Abandoned rail cars would function as apartment buildings. Natural cave systems would experience the ultimate gentrification as desperate surface dwellers discover that these underground spaces maintain comfortable temperatures year-round, regardless of the atmospheric chaos happening above. Carlsbad Caverns, Mammoth Cave, and similar geological formations would become overcrowded underground metropolises. Humans compete for living space in chambers that nature spent millions of years carving out of solid rock. The transition from surface civilization to underground living would force humanity to completely reimagine urban planning and architecture. Instead of building up toward the sky, survivors would need to excavate downward into Earth's crust. Mining equipment would become more valuable than construction cranes as human communities expand their underground territories by digging deeper into bedrock. The deepest subway stations and basement levels would become the most desirable addresses as distance from the surface provides better insulation from temperature extremes. But underground living would require solving problems that surface civilization never had to consider. Air circulation becomes a life or death issue when fresh surface air might be lithely hot or cold depending on the season. Water supply systems would need complete redesign since most current sources depend on surface collection and treatment. Waste disposal becomes exponentially more complicated when you can't simply truck garbage to distant landfills that might be located in uninhabitable temperature zones. Perhaps most psychologically challenging, underground civilization would force humans to abandon natural light and live in artificially illuminated environments permanently. People born in these subterranean communities would grow up never seeing the sun, stars, or natural sky. The entire human experience would be compressed into the space between bedrock and soil, creating a civilization that exists in the narrow gap between Earth's surface and its solid interior. Humanity would essentially become a species of cave dwellers. Except these caves would be equipped with whatever technology we could salvage from the surface world before the temperature extremes made it uninhabitable. Modern civilization operates on the assumption that renewable energy will eventually replace fossil fuels as our primary power source. Wind farms, solar panels, and hydroelectric dams represent humanity's clean energy future under normal planetary conditions. But when Earth stops rotating, this entire renewable energy infrastructure would become about as useful as a chocolate teapot in a furnace, forcing survivors to power their underground civilization with whatever energy sources can function in a world where weather patterns have gone completely insane. Solar panels would become the most ironic technology on a motionless Earth. The day side would receive 6 months of continuous sunlight that could theoretically power entire continents, except the extreme heat would destroy photovoltaic cells within weeks of exposure to 175-degree temperatures. Meanwhile, the night side would offer perfect installation conditions for solar arrays that would generate absolutely zero electricity for half the year. Solar energy would transition from renewable resource to expensive, unreliable technology. It would work only in the narrow twilight zone where humans can access and maintain the equipment. Wind power would face equally catastrophic operational challenges. The 300 miles per hour thermal winds would provide more kinetic energy than any wind farm was designed to handle. They would be generated by Earth's temperature differentials. Wind turbines were engineered to operate in 30 miles per hour breezes. They would be shredded to pieces within hours of exposure to hypersonic atmospheric conditions. The moving air would contain enough energy to power entire countries. But harnessing it would require redesigning wind generation technology. It would need to withstand forces that make hurricane winds look gentle. This leaves underground human communities dependent on the only energy sources that can operate reliably beneath Earth's surface. Those sources are geothermal heat from the planet's interior and whatever nuclear power systems we can maintain. Geothermal energy would become humanity's most precious resource. Communities would compete for locations near underground hot springs and thermal vents. These provide consistent heat regardless of surface conditions. Nuclear power would face the ultimate stress test as existing power plants become inaccessible due to surface temperature extremes. Nuclear facilities designed with the assumption of regular maintenance access and cooling water availability would need complete operational redesign. They would need to function autonomously for months at a time. Underground communities would need to develop smaller, more resilient nuclear reactors that can operate without extensive surface infrastructure or regular human intervention. Perhaps most remarkably, human energy consumption would need to scale down from industrial civilization levels to something approaching medieval energy usage. Underground communities could not support the energy-intensive lifestyle that surface civilization made possible. Electric lighting, heating, and basic electronics would consume most available power. This would leave little energy for manufacturing, transportation, or entertainment technologies that modern humans consider essential. Survivors would essentially live like high-tech hermits. They would use sophisticated technology to maintain basic survival while abandoning most of the energy-consuming conveniences that define contemporary life. Agriculture has operated under the same basic assumptions for thousands of years. Plants need soil, sunlight, water, and favorable weather conditions to produce food. But when Earth's surface becomes uninhabitable and human communities retreat underground, food production would need to transition from agriculture to something more resembling industrial manufacturing. Growing food would become an engineering problem requiring artificial everything. Artificial light, artificial soil, artificial climate control, and artificial ecosystems that can operate in spaces designed for mining rather than farming. Underground food production would depend entirely on LED grow lights that can substitute for sunlight in caverns and tunnels where natural light never penetrates. These artificial suns would consume enormous amounts of electricity to provide the wavelengths of light that plants require for photosynthesis. Food production would compete directly with human survival needs for the limited electrical power available to underground communities. Every calorie of food grown would require multiple calories worth of electricity to produce, creating an energy deficit that makes underground agriculture far less efficient than traditional surface farming. The plants themselves would need complete redesign for underground cultivation. Traditional crops like wheat, corn, and rice require large open spaces and specific seasonal conditions that underground environments cannot provide. Underground farmers would need to focus on compact, high-yield plants that can produce maximum nutrition in minimal space with artificial lighting. Mushroom cultivation would become a primary food source since fungi can grow without any sunlight and thrive in the humid, dark conditions that underground environments naturally provide. But perhaps the most psychologically challenging dietary transition would be humanity's forced conversion to insect-based protein sources. Livestock requires too much space and food to maintain in underground environments where every square foot of habitable space is precious. Insects like crickets, mealworms, and various grubs can produce protein more efficiently in smaller spaces with less resource input than traditional farm animals. Underground communities would need to overcome thousands of years of cultural conditioning against eating insects and accept bug protein as the foundation of their post-rotation diet. Food processing and preservation would become exponentially more important when growing fresh food requires such enormous resource investment. Underground communities would need to develop ultra-efficient food preservation techniques to make their limited agricultural output last as long as possible. Dehydration, fermentation, and other preservation methods would become essential survival technologies rather than optional food processing techniques. Perhaps most remarkably, successful underground agriculture would require communities to essentially recreate entire ecosystems in artificial environments. Soil microorganisms, pollinating insects, and the complex biological relationships that support plant growth would all need to be maintained artificially in underground spaces. Underground farmers would become ecosystem engineers, maintaining miniature biological worlds that can produce food in environments where no natural ecosystem could survive. Food production would transform from farming into a sophisticated form of biological engineering that requires constant technical expertise to maintain the artificial life support systems that keep plants alive in humanity's underground refuge. For most of human history, our ancestors were nomads who followed favorable climate conditions and seasonal food sources across vast distances. Agricultural civilization allowed humans to settle in permanent communities by learning to control food production rather than chase it. But when Earth stops rotating and creates only one narrow band of habitable climate around the entire planet, humanity would be forced to abandon 10,000 years of settled civilization and return to nomadic life on a scale that dwarfs anything in prehistoric history. The Twilight Zone, that 300-mile wide band where temperatures remain livable, would slowly migrate around Earth's surface each year as the planet orbits the Sun. Any human community hoping to remain in habitable climate conditions would need to pack up their entire civilization every 6 months and migrate roughly 12,500 miles to stay within the moving zone of survivable temperatures. This represents a migration distance that exceeds the circumference of the Earth at the equator. It would be completed twice annually by communities carrying everything necessary for technological survival. These neo-nomadic communities would need to completely reimagine human settlement patterns around mobility rather than permanence. Instead of building substantial structures designed to last for generations, survivors would construct lightweight, portable shelters that can be assembled and disassembled rapidly as communities move to follow the twilight zone. Traditional architecture would be replaced by sophisticated camping equipment designed for permanent travel rather than temporary outdoor recreation. The logistics of moving entire technological communities twice each year would challenge every transportation system ever developed. Nomadic groups would need to transport not just people and basic supplies, but also the sophisticated equipment necessary to maintain underground food production, energy generation, and communication systems. Mobile workshops, portable power generators, and collapsible manufacturing facilities would become essential infrastructure for communities that cannot afford to leave critical technology behind when they migrate. But perhaps the greatest challenge would be maintaining social cohesion and cultural knowledge within communities that spend most of their time traveling rather than building. Traditional education assumes that children will grow up in stable communities with permanent institutions for learning and skill development. Nomadic education would need to operate more like apprenticeship systems where knowledge gets transmitted during travel rather than in dedicated educational facilities. These perpetual migrations would also create unprecedented challenges for intercommunity coordination and trade. When every surviving human group is constantly moving to stay within habitable climate zones, establishing trade relationships and communication networks becomes exponentially more difficult. Communities might encounter each other briefly while traveling in opposite directions, but maintaining long-term diplomatic or economic relationships would require developing entirely new systems for mobile civilization coordination. Perhaps most poignantly, this return to nomadic life would force humanity to abandon the concept of permanent homelands that has defined human culture for millennia. No location on Earth would remain habitable long enough for communities to develop the deep geographical connections that create cultural identity and historical continuity. Human communities would become permanent refugees from their own planet's climate, forever seeking temporary shelter from weather conditions that make traditional settlement impossible. Economic inequality has been a persistent challenge throughout human history, but it typically operates within societies where everyone shares roughly similar basic survival conditions. When Earth stops rotating and survival resources become scarce beyond anything previously experienced, the gap between rich and poor would expand into a chasm that makes current inequality look trivial by comparison. Access to underground shelter, reliable energy, and food production would create a class system based not on wealth accumulation, but on literal survival capability. The ultra-wealthy who can afford sophisticated underground facilities would essentially become a separate subspecies of humanity, living in climate-controlled subterranean cities equipped with nuclear power, hydroponic farms, and advanced life support systems. These underground palaces would operate like space stations buried in Earth's crust, providing their inhabitants with living conditions that approximate normal civilization while the surface world collapses into chaos. The technological elite would maintain internet connectivity, artificial daylight cycles, and even recreational facilities in their high-tech bunkers. Meanwhile, the majority of surviving humans would face a dramatic downgrade in living conditions that forces them back to subsistence-level existence. Without access to sophisticated underground facilities, most survivors would live in natural caves, abandoned mines, or hastily excavated tunnels with minimal life support infrastructure. These communities would operate more like medieval settlements than modern societies, focusing entirely on basic survival needs like food, water, and warmth, with little energy or resources available for education, entertainment, or technological development. The middle class would essentially disappear as an economic category. The resource requirements for maintaining technological civilization underground are so extreme that there would be no gradual gradation between high-tech survival and primitive subsistence living. Communities would either have access to sophisticated life support systems or they wouldn't. There would be no intermediate level of partially technological survival that could support a middle-class lifestyle in underground conditions. This extreme resource stratification would create unprecedented challenges for maintaining social cohesion and democratic governance. The technological elite would possess life or death control over the most advanced survival resources, giving them power over other human communities that exceeds anything achieved by historical aristocracies. The underground cities would become fortress states that could choose whether or not to share their life support technology with less fortunate communities struggling to survive in primitive conditions. Perhaps most tragically, this survival-based class system would likely become hereditary in ways that make social mobility impossible. Children born in high-tech underground cities would grow up with access to advanced education, sophisticated technology, and comfortable living conditions. Meanwhile, children born in primitive cave communities would lack access to the educational and technological resources necessary to ever improve their survival conditions. The accident of birth location would determine not just economic status, but fundamental life or death access to the resources necessary for long-term survival. The ultimate irony is that this extreme inequality would emerge precisely when human civilization faces its greatest existential threat. At the moment when cooperation and resource sharing could determine the difference between human extinction and survival. The scarcity of survival resources would drive communities apart rather than bringing them together. Earth's rotation stopping would not just change the planet's climate. It would fundamentally alter human nature by creating survival pressures that make inequality a matter of life and death, rather than merely economic disadvantage.